So, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here and talk all about science because science is one of my favorite subjects to teach. It's always so fun and it's always the one that the students love the most. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking about that and remembering some of the things that I did in my class. And one thing that I did in my class that I will never forget is I had the kids get in these big trash bags and used my vacuum to suck all the air out so they could feel the pressure of the bag. And then I actually got into one and tried it myself. And the feeling was unlike something I'd ever felt. I didn't know what to expect, but it was such a cool, unique experience. And I think that's what science can bring to the classroom. So I'm so excited to talk to you. So let's start by just having you introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Shari Stewart. I am first a mom of two teenagers, and my husband and I have been married for 25 years this year. I've been teaching for about 20, I think this is my 29th year, 28, 29. I've lost track. That's too many, but wonderful years. This is my 23rd year at the school that I'm currently at. Took a little break when I had kiddos and went to other schools and we moved away. But I have been doing science now, the science coordinator here for 7 years. And I feel like I finally figured out what I want to do with my life because I'm doing it and I love it. But yeah, I just love teaching science. I try to make sure that I'm working as a coordinator. I work with the classroom teachers and we hand in hand make sure that we're getting an earth science, life science, and a physical science across all the grades. And I teach pre-K through 5th grade. Yeah.
Ooh, wow, that is a lot of fun. I bet you go home really exhausted though after all of that.
Yeah.
Just the excitement that's in the room when you're teaching a science lesson or doing an experiment. It like kind of wears you out a little bit. It's exhausting, but so
You
fun.
get used to it, you build your stamina for sure, but it's funny, I'll have conversations with other science teachers and they're like, "Oh, I had to do a lab today." I'm like, "Oh, I did 5." So you just have to build your stamina.
Yep, they need their coffee after one.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I was teaching, I taught science, and there was always a push to really focus on math and English. And then it was science in, if you can, was kind of the mentality that went on. And I think that was because I was a fourth grade teacher and it was a highly tested grade level. And so science was not a subject that was tested in fourth grade. Why do you think teachers need to prioritize science? Why is science so important?
That's a great question. So for me, I did a little research a few years ago on the importance of science in our elementary school age kids. They're naturally curious, but and I don't know where the statistic came from, so I apologize for not having that information, but where it said 92% of boys and 97% of girls lose interest in science by the 5th grade. That to me was like triggering. I'm like, okay, that can't happen. All the jobs that they're going to be applying for is all in STEM, and so we need to really keep that going, keep that enthusiasm for science and learning about science because it's just going to help them in their future. Um, I also feel like science, I think it was Carl Sagan that said, science is a knowledge base, not a subject matter. So we really want to make sure that it's something that when they're reading a book, like where's the science in it? So that integration is going to be kind of a common thread that I'm going to keep saying over and over and over today with you, but just really looking forward to ways that you can look at a subject and then find the science in it, and then it's integrated, because trying to find time in your schedule when our schedules are so tight anyway, to have science as a block of time, it's hard, and a lot of people don't have that. So how can we integrate it?
So I think the go-to integration would just be a reading passage with some comprehension questions. Can you give us a couple of ideas of maybe a way to integrate it that is more fun? Because maybe that's why they're losing their interest in science, because we are trying to integrate it into language arts, but we do it so much with just like a reading passage.
Right. So I was thinking about this, and I taught 4th grade as well for 3 years, and you're doing novel studies. So some of the novels, like I used to do Harry Potter, the book one. And so taking it and doing like a potions lesson and having that be like an extension, and well, when you mix this with this, what's going to happen? Adding that to the story that you're already reading just ignites their interest in like or an herbology class, and then we can plant little herbs and things of that nature. So it connects to the novel, but as well as gets the science going, and then talk about the science as you're doing it. Because that's the other piece. You can't just plant the herbs and be like, okay, well, we planted herbs, so we did an herbology lesson. You have to talk about the science, like what plants need, how are these plants going to survive, what is the life cycle of a plant. So really integrating the science behind it, so then it integrates it in the novel study. Another one of my favorite lessons for the upper school kiddos was this book called Fuzzy Mud, and I might mispronounce his name, but by Louis Sakar, I think it is. He wrote Holes
Lewis.
as well.
Yes, I was just about to talk about holes.
He wrote a book called Fuzzy Mud. It is phenomenal. It is wonderful, and it's great to integrate all things of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, because it's about this microorganism that grows in the mud. So it's all about doubling. So you could do math with that, and then I would integrate my math with it, and then I would do a whole lesson on microbiology and growing yeast and those particles. And so looking at them underneath a microscope and seeing how they double in size, and then we baked it into a bread. I mean, it was an awesome way to integrate all kinds of fun things with a novel, and it just brought the kids into the novel too. They were like, oh, this is so great. So I recommend that one. For the little guys, I taught also kindergarten and first grade for 11 years. And so one of my favorites was Chrysanthemum, Kevin Hikes, just fabulous. And so you could do a whole comparison of different flowers, chrysanthemum versus daisy, and grow those, again, doing life cycle. You could even dissect chrysanthemums, dissect daisies, what's similar, what's different, compare, contrast. Those are just some couple of novels and a couple stories. But what I really strongly believe in is if you can look at something that you have to do, I have to teach a certain novel or a certain story, or I have to teach some sort of literature. I have to do this in my regular ed classroom. How can I grab that piece of it and then connect it to science? And then that connects to my lesson. So then it could be, the three little pigs, and then you build houses, and then you try to knock them down with the wind. There's just, the ideas are endless. Take what you already have and then integrate the science into it. And it's going to make your time go by so much faster too. You're like, oh my gosh, I've got my writing with this. I've got my science with this. I did my literature with this, spelling. I mean, it's going to get everything all connected for you.
All of those are so amazing. Yeah. And it is just the difference between a novel study versus a reading passage on a worksheet with some questions or whatever. That is the difference between making you love it and not. And when you were talking about the first novel, I was thinking of how when we read Holes one year, and just for the fun of it, we did a deep dive onto like maybe what the sploosh was. That was the I think it was peaches that had been 100 year old or something, and kind of just did that for the fun of it. But that's what I remember about reading Holes to the kids. That's the one thing that I remember the most of that whole time we spent. So I know the kids feel that way too. Yeah. So I love the idea of integrating when and where possible. When you have to do a more formal lab, or you have a curriculum that your school follows and it, includes, let's say, earth science, all the things that you just mentioned, how can you go about having labs and experiments and explorations without having the overwhelm of having to come up with all the materials that you're going to need and the prep work that goes into it?
Right. So that's so true. And I hear that a lot from a lot of classroom teachers. I have a lab with 56 drawers full of stuff. So I have all my materials, but I hear what people are saying. I think what I would suggest, and this is what I had when I was in a regular ed classroom, is I actually had I called it my science tub. And I kept paper plates in there, cups in there, napkins, straws, plasticware. I kept all the things that I think that I might need for a certain lesson, and I never touched it unless I was doing it for science. I didn't dabble in like, oh, somebody forgot to bring napkins, so I need my napkins from my science tub for snack. Nope, I just that was for science, and I designated that supplies just for science. So then when it came time for the lesson, I could open that up and be like, okay, great, I've got my cups. Yep, I've got enough. I've got everything that I need in here. I've got my paper plates. I've got my cups. I've got straws. Okay, I think I've got everything I need. I need to get some sand. I can go to the sandbox and go grab some sand for this one. So I can easily grab what I need. So you're not feeling that panic, that rush, like, oh, I don't have what I need. Oh, I guess I'll get to it tomorrow, or I'll do it another time, because that's what ends up happening. We rob from Peter to pay Paul. And so then we don't end up doing the science lesson because we have to do this other stuff. So just always being prepared is huge. And then ask your parents, ask your families for help. You'd be surprised if you put a wish list out at the beginning of the week, say, hey, we're going to be doing Circle of Seasons and we're going to be learning about the seasons. Can you bring in a paper plate? We need paper plates for it so we can collect leaves, or we're going to be doing something else that we might need some cups for. Can parents will they love to support, but they're busy. They're busy. So this is their way of showing support to you. So, and then keep that in your little supply bin, throw it in there. And if you've got extras, you hang on to it because then you might need it for another thing. So that was my other big thing, having it in a supply bin. And then also, pre-planning. I'm a huge pre-planner. Like, I know what I'm doing for the whole trimester, all of my labs, because I have to do so many. So I have everything planned out. And then if I don't have something, then I know prior to what I need to go get or what I can do. So being pre-planned will save you tremendous headache too. You're like, oh my gosh, I was going to do that science lesson with the apples and I forgot to buy the apples. Okay, that's okay. What else could you do instead of doing the apple tasting? Is there something else that you could do that you have around in your space? Oh, we have crackers. Perfect. Then just do a senses testing with crackers, and you can test, what is it, crunchy, is it salty? You can still do the same lesson even though you don't have the exact supply. Does that make sense?
Yes, everything you said is just, I mean, it's obvious that you're an expert and that you've been serving in this role for 7 years because you know what it's going to really help. I love the idea of having a science box. I know at the beginning of the year when teachers are doing their open house and parents are all there, I've heard a lot of teachers asking like to donate post-it notes or donate markers for the whiteboard. So why not add some science materials on there too?
Mhm.
Everything you mentioned was just an everyday, regular old thing that
Yeah.
they might even just already have at home that they can bring. And the other thing you said about pre planning is just gold because that is what it takes. I mean, it
Yeah.
reminds me of meal planning and
Mhm.
the weeks that I do meal planning, like on Sunday, and I plan it out and I go online and make my order and have it all, those are the days that we stick to eating at home, saving money. Anytime I don't meal plan, I end
Mhm.
up every day feeling stressed out like, what are we going to have today? What are we going to have today? Or going out to eat and wasting $80 on
Yeah.
something that wasn't even good just because we didn't have it at home. So, the same logic applies. If you
Mhm.
are planning on it and expecting it and are ready for it, it's going
Mhm.
to go off without a hitch and you're
Yeah.
going to enjoy it. It's not going to feel stressful. And then the kids are going to get all the benefits from it.
Yes. Yes. Your energy level will be like, I'm ready, I'm excited for this. And then that just spews off into your children. The students will eat off of that as well. I always try to have my lab when the kids come in prepared, ready. I'm never standing around grabbing stuff at the last second. I'm always like, okay, here they come. And I always have them help clean up, help them set up. That's also a big part of it. As a scientist, I always tell the students, like, okay, as a scientist, you can't just leave your lab a mess, because when you come back, something could be growing on your mess. So we want to make sure we clean up. So teaching them those responsibilities as well is huge too. It's going to help you. I know teachers are like, yeah, but I don't want them to put this away or put that away. Then you just teach them. If you teach them the way you want your things organized, then it'll save you a million times of time later. Yeah.
So I have never worked at a school that had a science coordinator or a science specialist or anything. It's just been on the shoulders of the teachers to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
So you've mentioned some really good advice for staying on top of things as the teacher, but maybe you could talk a little bit about how to rely on your teammates. Maybe you could make it a more coordinated effort instead of just going at it alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your team is are people that are professionals, and they want to be they want you to be successful, you want them to be successful. So being a team player is huge. For me, one of the things that I do is I really do work hand in hand with the classroom teachers, because I only see the students the way that my lab works and my schedule works. I see them once, and we do a 6-day rotation. So I see my students in the lab only once in 6 days. So I have to bank that the teachers are doing the extension, the other piece, the reading piece, the literature piece that goes along with when we're learning about the moon. Are they reading Goodnight Moon? Are they reading the Hildegard book about the moon? Are they doing the different things in the classroom that connects to the lab? And then are they doing other science as well? So then when the kids come back to me, I'm like, so what did you do this week about the moon? And then they can just tell me like, oh, my teacher did this and this and this. And that connection lets the students know that we're all in this together. I respect your teachers. We respect each other. And your knowledge and your understanding of whatever we're teaching you is so important to us, not to me, but to us. And I think the us is huge. Yeah.
We did have at our school, not, we didn't have a science teacher and we didn't have much in the way of a science lab, but our librarian was an amazing makerspace resource. She put on makerspace for the entire school every week. And that focused on STEAM things. So
Mhm.
maybe you could talk a little bit about STEM, STEAM, STREAM.
Yeah.
What are those things? And how are those related to science? How are those important in the scientific explorations?
Yeah, so that is the big thing, integrating STEAM and STEM or whatever or stream. So STEM started off with it's science, technology, engineering, and math. The STEAM is adding the art element into it. So it's science, technology, engineering, art, and math, because a lot of art really is connecting into that creativity, the creative part of the brain to understand different concepts, whether it's about science or not. And I'll give an example in just a second. And then the stream is really integrating it. I've heard the stream be with an R, be robotics or also reading. So either. So you can kind of put whatever you choose for either one of those. But for example, when I try to do STEAM in the lab or with the classroom teachers, one of the things we're doing maybe light and understanding how light works, translucent, opaque, translucent, opaque, transparent. There we go. So when we're doing translucent, I do a lesson in here on translucent light, and then we do another follow-up lesson where they're building maybe a stained glass picture for their windows. So it's an art integration, and because I love being creative, and that's one of my favorite things to do is to do art lessons and to show students that art actually can connect with science in a lot of ways. One year we made our own homemade paints, even from flowers that we had in the garden, and we brought them in and we ground them all up, and then we painted different pictures with them, and we talked about how the flowers grew and of course the life cycle. But then we talked about how can we make this more of a purpley color when it's not really very purple, it's more of a pale. That's okay. So we just talked about all those different things, but also, like I said, it's art integration into it. I'm trying to think of one with reading. I just did one just the other day with weathering, erosion, and deposition. So we read an article, and then we had to do the comprehension, and this is all in the science lab. And then, of course, we did an actual lesson. I had them build sand. I call them sand mesas because we're in New Mexico. So a little sand mesa, and then they had to erode it. And then we had to try to build it again and protect it with different materials, cotton balls, Q-tips, things that we just had to try to protect it from eroding. See it, and we had a stopwatch, so we integrated time, like which one eroded faster than compared to the other one. Just lots of different ideas. But STEAM and STEM and STREAM, they're all super important. And if you think about your schedule, think about how you can incorporate, like if lots of people in their schedule may have a reading block or a math block, changing your mindset so that it's my stream block or it's my STEAM block, then it helps you to also integrate the science and the technology into that math block, into that reading block. If you think about it, instead of being just math and reading, okay, I'm going to change my mindset. It's not my math block, it's now my STEAM block or STEM, whatever you choose. That's kind of my biggest thing too. mindset.
You're blowing me away with all your little things that you're saying. And I mean, I said it already, but you are obviously an expert on building science education into the classroom. So I love too that you have the background of being a classroom teacher so that you can understand what that's like
Mhm.
and work alongside the teacher and do it in a realistic way that's manageable because I think I think the biggest drawback to having the science classroom that you want is just overwhelm, and teachers are already so overwhelmed, and science is one of those things where you should be doing better. Your lesson could be a lot more engaging, but you're already overwhelmed with other things
Mhm.
and you don't have the materials, you don't like all those things are the barriers, and you're helping us to understand how those things don't have to be barriers.
The other piece for me is you don't have to have a huge science background in order to embrace it either. Like my background is in science. I have an environmental education background, but it just because I have that doesn't mean that that's why I do it. When I was in the regular ed classroom, the kids love it. The kids are so engaged when you pull science things out or you tell them we're going to do some STEAM lessons. They are like, oh, what are we going to do today? And that's always what you want. You want that to be an experience. And that's the things that they go home and they talk about at home at the dinner. Steve Spangler talks about that all the time. If you make it to the dinner table, then you've won. So, like, you can get them to go home and say, oh my gosh, we're reading this book. And then we did this lesson and it was so great. And I was so cool. And I learned all this great stuff. Then you've won. You've won for sure.
So true. So
Mhm.
true. Having kids, like, yes, you can hardly pull anything out of them. Okay, we're going to play a little game where I have just some regular little things in that I've printed on little slips of paper that I'm going to draw out. I think this is interesting because many of the things that I put in here are some things that you mentioned earlier having in your science bucket. So I'm feeling a lot more confident now that I'm not going to stump you with all these things. So
Well, I'm feeling a little nervous.
well, I would definitely feel nervous too, but I feel like you're going to have lots of ideas for these things. So I'm going to randomly draw one out. So the first one that I have picked is paper clips.
Ooh, paper clips. Well, right away, the first thing that comes to my mind is electricity. And you grab a little battery and and a little light bulb, and they're super cheap. You can get 100 of them for, I think it might be like $3 on Amazon. Those tiny little light bulbs, which the kids love. And then give them a little Ziploc bag with a battery, 2 paper clips, and a little light bulb and say, make it light. And don't give them any other instruction. Just see if they can do it. And I do that with my 4th graders, and it is so magical. The photos that I have of that is so great because they're like, yes. And then, okay, and and it's always the kiddo that thinks that, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. I know how to, they're the ones that are saying, they're not the ones that are the first ones. It's usually somebody that's quiet and it's like, just, I think I might know how to do this. And then it takes one and then they all just trickle. It's like dominoes and it's a beautiful thing in the classroom. It's so magical. I love it.
Oh
Paper
my
clips.
gosh. So last week I had Rachel Gurr on the podcast and she
Mhm.
was talking about student owned learning, and she would have loved what you just said. Give
Yep.
them a prompt or a problem and let them work together with a friend or something and have at it and figure it out.
And
So,
for that one, I don't even teach them about the different types of circuits. I literally say, you're going to make a circuit and you need to light the light bulb. Here you go. And that's all I say. And it's
fun.
just magical. It's so much fun.
I remember one year I did a similar experiment to that, but they used pennies.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
just kept
As a
stacking
method.
pennies until they could get enough.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is going to be toothpicks.
Okay, toothpicks. So one of my favorite, it's more of like an aha, like a shocker moment, is that one where you break them and you like break them, but don't break them all the way so they're in half, and you put 5 of them so that they're broken, so the broken points are stuck, and then you drop water in the middle, and then it turns into a star. Have you seen that?
No.
That is magical too. I usually do that with my kindergartners because it's a great experiment. We make hypothesis and like, what do you think is going to happen? Well, if it's broken, is it going to sink? Is it going to float? And we go through this whole like rigmarole about what might happen. And when they drop the water in the middle of it, the surface tension has the wood of the toothpick spreads apart and it makes into a star. It's so cool. They're like, whoa. And it's like, it's really fun. That's a good one too.
Okay. You think I'm going to be doing that when I get off this call? See
It's
if I
really
can
fun.
make it work. Okay. Next one is socks. And again, I just tried to put regular activities because I want the listeners to see you can make a science exploration out of pretty much anything. Okay.
Oh,
Socks.
socks. I actually use socks and other materials. I have a whole little bag. I call it my gravity bag. And we do a whole gravity race. And so we do a sock versus a hat and which one's going to fall faster. And then we do like a pillow versus a book and which one falls faster. So we're doing a whole gravity race. And that's a really fun one. And the kids take hypothesis and they think, oh, I think this one's going to fall faster. And some of them are really hard. Like I have a dice. Yeah, not a die, I should say, and versus a quarter, I think it is. That's a hard one because they're like, ooh. So you build up to it, of course, but I do use a sock for my gravity.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see. Aluminum foil.
Oh, that's a good one too. So you can use that for circuits, of course. And that's a really fun one for circuits because you can extend your like LED lights and make it so it's longer and then do a little button battery on the end and do like a little flashlight or a lightsaber. Harry Potter, you could turn it into a little wand, right?
Okay.
Which we made those too. But also tinfoil or aluminum foil, we had to make, we used it for our erosion. We created something that would protect it. So everybody had like a small piece and then they had to figure out how to use it to protect their sand mesa. And I've also used it for building of a hat. So a hat design that would keep is it, sweat resistant? Not so much. So what could you do to prevent it from getting too sweaty? And then I've also used it for ovens when you cook outside, like a built s'mores oven. So that's fun too.
Oh my gosh, all of those things sound so fun. Okay, I feel like I'm not stumping you with a random draw. So now I'm gonna I'm gonna look through and see some of these I think are too easy for you. Okay. Oh wait, here's a good one. Uncooked spaghetti noodles.
Oh, I don't use a lot of those in the lab, but I have seen people use them for like building. So one time we were learning about plate tectonics and we did, earthquakes. And so they built structures with marshmallows and toothpicks. And then we tested them on a piece of, it wasn't tin foil, but it was kind of like a cookie sheet. And we had to give it a shake to see if it would last. So uncooked, I don't use a lot of that, but there's one I did use a long time ago.
That is so fun. I've seen people use it when they're doing geometry lessons
Oh yeah.
on lines and points and angles. And I've seen
Angles.
people use little marshmallows with spaghetti noodles to create different geometric shapes. How fun. Okay, let me see if there, let me do one more, but I'm going to try to make it, I'm going to try to make it hard. Let's see. Let's do, I feel like I got to get every like ounce of your knowledge out of you. Okay, I'm going to let you pick between the last two. We got either egg cartons or toy dinosaurs.
Oh, okay. So egg cartons, I like that one. One of the things we did actually during COVID is I was teaching online and I was doing my rock and mineral lesson with my little guys. And so I had them go out and use an egg carton to collect different rocks that they found in their backyard. And then we did a show and tell. And then we had to then break them into they had to do, I think we only did 6. And so we had to do 2 igneous, 2 metamorphic, 2 sedimentary, and see if they really were based on the information that we were sharing with each other. So that was a really fun one because everybody's got an egg carton. The other one that's really fun with egg cartons, if it's a styrofoam egg carton, is taking it and dissolving it in acetone. Have you done that?
Oh,
Okay, so acetone you can buy. It's just nail polish remover, but you want to have it 100%. So you can get that just at any grocery store or anything. It doesn't have to be like a specialty like Sally's or anything. And when you put it into a container and you take your styrofoam egg carton and you put it into the acetone, it just like dissolves it and it just eats it all up into this sludge. Oh, it's magical. That's fun. That's really cool.
oh my gosh. Like I want to try that now too. I
Yeah,
just want to
that's
see
a
what
good one.
it's kind of like me getting in that trash sack. Like the
Yeah.
feeling is something that never would expect. And the same thing, I bet if I were to dissolve that, it would look different than what I imagine that it's going to.
We compared different, so each table had different things, and we compared like styrofoam lunch containers. We did those versus egg cartons versus cups that you get at the drink. So we were just talking about styrofoam. We did a whole lesson on how styrofoam stays in our environment for 500 years, doesn't really dissolve. So we found acetone does dissolve it. Can't really have that though in the landfills because it's smelly and not very tough. It's kind of toxic to smell that much that you would need. But it was so great because then it led into another discussion that we talked about environmental safety and how can we be environmentally friendly with some of the styrofoam that we use. That's why we have water bottles and that we have reusable water bottles and all those great things. And it just really kind of steamrolled into a bunch of different things. And again, this was right around Earth Day. So that was the other thing I was going to mention. A lot of times people, like, they have certain things that they have to teach, but there's always those holidays. So integrate your STEAM into the holidays. Do the fun things during the holidays. So again, that was an Earth Day one that we did, but there's so many things out there too for different holidays that there might be, whether it's St. Patrick's Day or whatever, but integrate your STEAM into those fun things too. Halloween's coming. Do some fun STEAM.
Do you have a resource that you go to help you, come up with ideas or?
Pinterest. Pinterest is my best friend. So I have so many great pins and I organize them by grade level, by the standards that I need to meet, because there's so many great ideas that are out there. All those things that I'm just kind of mentioning, they're out there. It just takes some fun time to find them. I don't do a lot of social media except for Pinterest. That's probably the only one that I do, but I do think that that's a great resource for lots of things. And then personally and professionally, I mentioned Steve Spangler. I'm a huge fan of his. This summer I got an opportunity to go to Science in the Rockies and meet him and do the whole teacher training and best day ever kind of thing. So it was amazing. It was so much fun. And I learned a lot about my presentation and, again, that energy that you bring to your lesson. I used to joke about it. Like, if you can come in with a lot of energy and excitement, you can make anything, even the most mundane of like handwriting lesson, on making, you can make that so much fun if your energy is engaging and fun.
Mm.
So all of this science stuff is great and wonderful, but if you're going to present it and it's going to be, all right, boys and girls, well, we're going to do some erosion today, and they're going to feel that. But you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this amazing thing called weathering and erosion. Boom, changes completely. Completely.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had another podcast episode with a lady named Lily Reyna, and she was talking all about creativity. And basically, she said, I am like the circus master, and this is my circus. And
Yes.
that's how she runs her class. And that's why her class is always so engaged and ready to learn anything.
And they feed off of that. Your students will feed off of that. If you're engaged and excited, they're going to be engaged and excited. And it doesn't have to be crazy chaotic. It can still be managed. Because I mean, I'm doing science, so it's always about safety first. I mean, I dress up and we have all different kinds of stations that we have to rotate through. And one time I dressed up like a rock star for the Hard Rock Cafe because we were going to do all these rocks and minerals. But the level of safety is still there. It's not compromised, even though the engagement is.
Mm. Well, you are for sure a rock star teacher. It is
Thank you.
so obvious just in talking to you this little bit that you're one of the teachers that I would love to be on a team with and work alongside. So
Thank you.
exciting.
I'm blushing. I am. I'm blushing. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there
I
any
really,
final things you'd like to share before we
the
sign
only
off?
thing I really hope to instill in all of the listeners is really change your mindset. Science is not an unattainable thing that you have to teach. You get to teach it and you get to incorporate it. So changing the mindset from like, oh, I have to do reading and I have to do math, being more of like, I get to do these things and how can I incorporate my science into it? That integration piece is going to make your life so much easier if you can just change that mindset of that it's a separate subject, that it really is a knowledge base of integrating it to everything that you do. I
Mm,
think that's my biggest message. I think because then you're going to be happier too, because you'll have everything that you need.
yeah. Well, you have shared some resources that I'm going to put on the blog. So if you would
Okay.
like to download some lessons, that are going to be super fun for your students. You can go to the show notes and grab those there. And thank you so much for coming. And I have enjoyed every second with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.